Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is honestly incredibly frustrating, but also completely fascinating. We're going to look at the exact cognitive science behind why brilliant, carefully thought out ideas just get ignored, while seemingly shallow, basic advice goes absolutely viral online. I mean, have you ever watched your well-researched, highly nuanced idea just die in silence? We've all been there, right? You spend weeks refining a strategy, drafting the absolute perfect memo, or writing an essay you're deeply proud of. You put it out into the world and crickets. Literally zero traction. And then contrast that massive effort with what usually happens. Imagine a highly educated friend publishes this brilliant 4,000-word essay on metacognition. It gets exactly 47 readers. Then, in that exact same week, some creator posts the simple tweet saying, "Your bet is your enemy," and boom, 90,000 retweets. It's enough to fill any intelligent person with primal, full-body rage. You might look at this and reasonably conclude that, hey, the world is broken, people are just shallow, and nuance is dead. But actually, the world isn't broken at all. There's just a massive disconnect in how we communicate.
Okay, let's get into part one, the Stanford experiment reveal.
The root of this disconnect actually goes back to this beautifully simple test conducted by a Stanford PhD student named Elizabeth Newton way back in 1990. She brought volunteers into a room, had them sit at a table, and asked them to tap out the rhythm of well-known songs, like Happy Birthday. The setup was super straightforward. The tappers had a very simple job: tap the rhythm on the table. Their partners had an even simpler job: guess the song. Now, the tappers, who could clearly hear the melody of the song playing loudly in their own heads as they tapped, predicted that their partners would guess the song correctly about 50% of the time. Half the time, right? I mean, that makes total logical sense to the person tapping. But here is the massive reality check. The actual success rate was a staggering 2.5%. Just 2.5%. That is a massive structural disconnect between what the tapper is experiencing and what the listener is actually getting. You see, the tapper is hearing this full, rich melody in their head, but the listener, they're just hearing a series of bizarre, nonsense thuds on a wooden table. When you write those brilliant, complex memos and essays, you are the tapper. You hear the beautiful melody of your deep understanding, but your audience is just hearing thuds. And I promise you, the fix is not to just tap harder. This phenomenon is formally known as the curse of knowledge. It's a cognitive bias where once you know something, you literally cannot accurately imagine what it's like not to know it. As you tap the table, your brain automatically fills in the lyrics, the melody, the whole ecosystem of context. And this filling in process is completely uncontrollable. It's automatic. It makes it physically impossible for you to hear your own tops as a stranger hears them, which structurally compromises your ability to communicate your ideas clearly from the very start.
So, moving on to part two, paying the clarity tax.
Here's the kicker. High intelligence actually amplifies this problem. Smart people don't just suffer from the curse of knowledge, they actively prefer nuance over resonance. They'd much rather be 100% accurate and entirely unread than 90% accurate and widely shared. They often feel like simplifying an idea is somehow a moral failure, like a betrayal of the truth. And this leads to what we call the clarity tax. It's the cumulative cognitive cost you charge your reader through subclauses, industry jargon, and excessive qualifications. Every single time you throw in a however, an undefined acronym, a footnote, or some long parenthetical note, you're levying a tax. And these taxes literally bankrupt your reader's mental energy. Imagine a reader walks into your piece with a finite cognitive budget. Let's call it 1,500 cognitive calories to spend on you. By the time they hit your third, long, complex sentence, they're down to 800 calories. By the fourth nested clause, they're at 200. And eventually they hit 0, and they just close the tab. You know, a reader doesn't leave because they disagree with you. Disagreement requires energy. They leave because they're simply too tired to keep translating your complexity.
Which brings us to part three, the Fluency Heuristic.
So why exactly does simple advice win? Well, it basically comes down to a core equation. Fluency equals truth. Those basic creators aren't just getting lucky, and they certainly aren't just posting shallow nonsense. They're actually tapping into the fluency heuristic. Cognitive psychologists have proven that the human brain codes easily digestible 200 millisecond inputs as truthful. Easy-to-process content automatically gets the benefit of the doubt. The creator who distills an idea into 10 simple words is operating at the absolute maximum fluency the language allows.
All right, let's pivot to part four, the translation framework.
Now, you don't have to become basic or post trite aphorisms to be heard.
You just have to stop being the tapper and start building a bridge your reader can actually cross. We do this using the translation framework. This framework consists of 3 highly actionable rules to successfully translate your hard, complex ideas into formats that actually spread. They are the one-variable rule, the 80% rule, and the dinner party test. Let's break these down and see how they actually work in practice.
First up is the one-variable rule. When you introduce a complex idea, you can only change one variable at a time: the topic, the vocabulary, the format, the frame, or the conclusion. Think about it. If you're a brilliant founder trying to explain a novel business model using novel jargon in a completely novel format, you're changing 3 variables at once. You double or triple the cognitive lift required, and frankly, you might as well be speaking an alien language. You absolutely must wrap your one new idea in comfortable, familiar wallpaper. Next, we have the 80% rule. Now, brace yourselves, because this one's going to hurt the careful thinkers out there. You do not get to teach the whole truth. Not on the internet, anyway. You get to teach 80% of the truth, the load-bearing core truth. The other 20%, the edge cases, the exceptions, the, technicallys, that has to be sacrificed or shoved into a footnote somewhere. I know, sacrificing that 20% feels like lying to a careful thinker, but providing an intact, memorable 80% is infinitely better than a 0% retention rate from an overly complex lecture. The reader who genuinely gets your 80%, they can always find the rest later when they need it. Finally, we have the dinner party test. Before you publish your idea, ask yourself this. If a reader tries to explain your idea to a stranger at a dinner party a week later, does the core idea survive the mauling? I mean, they're going to get half the details wrong, they'll forget your bullet points, and they'll probably spill wine while doing it. I challenge you to literally test this with a friend. If your idea only works when delivered perfectly with all caveats present and accounted for, it's a lecture, not a contagious idea. And lectures do not travel. And that leads us into our final section, Part 5, Intelligence Performed in Public. To really apply these rules, we have to undergo a fundamental mindset shift. Clarity is not the opposite of intelligence. Clarity is intelligence performed in public. Writing just to prove you're the smartest person in the room, that's just a performance. Taking a really hard idea and translating it so it lands cleanly in someone else's head on the very first read, now that is the harder, rare intellectual labor. That kind of translation makes your work a true gift to the reader's understanding, rather than just an audition for your peers. Because listen, your best ideas genuinely deserve to be heard. They aren't being held back by algorithms or by shallow audiences. They're being held back by your own desire to be slightly more accurate than readable. You really have to let that part of you lose just a little bit, just often enough to get that bridge built. Which brings us to our final, ultimate question for this explainer. Are you writing to prove you're the smartest person in the room, or are you building a bridge they can actually cross? I want to leave you with that provocative thought. Challenge yourself to stop tapping on the table and start using these translation rules the very next time you sit down to write. Thank you so much for diving deep with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.